Welcome to another edition of Expanding Mind. I'm your host, Eric Davis, continuing our conversations about the cultures of consciousness. One of my early avenues towards some consciousness culture back when I was a teenager was weird music. I listened to a lot of electronic music, the sort of dark side, new wave, psychedelia, Indian music, anything that could transport. That was sort of the goal. It's like music that took you somewhere else. And so whether that was like a ferocious punk rock tune or a Yes album or some spooky post-Brian Eno kind of ambient oddity from Europe, I loved it. And one of the records that I managed to get my hands on back in the 80s was a record by Trans-Millenia Consort called Plot Zero. And it was not from a major record label, so it had a slightly like homegrown vibe, and it was from California where I was living. And it featured interesting song titles like Mushroom Trip and Freebasing. But these were just sort of the icing on the cake, and the cake was some powerfully transporting music, electronic music, space music, head music. And it was really some of the first classic kind of electronic space music that I had heard from that era. And somewhere along the way, I lost the record. I moved from New York. I went to New York, and records got shuffled around, and there was a box that got lost in a move, and it was probably in that. And I looked for it since then, and I couldn't find it. And then I started to buy records on Discogs, and it was like $150. And I was like, oh, my God, this record's blowing up. And it turned out that, people were really falling in love with this obscure act, Trans-Millenia Consort. I didn't know anything about him except that there was a woman named Pauline Anna Strom associated with it. And so I thought this is just one of those things that I'll never know anything about again. I might never hear again except for the tracks I can hear on YouTube. And the whole record wasn't even on YouTube. And then, to my great delight, I heard that there was going to be a reissue of this marvelous music, not the entirety of that particular record, but a collection of Pauline's music that has recently come out on Rvng International Recordings, a Brooklyn label run by Matt Worth, a great label, lots of perfect for the kind of music nerd that I am. So Trans-Millenia music has just dropped this month. And even though I've been very busy lately finishing my book, I knew I wanted to write about it. So I wrote to The Wire, and I was, oh my God, let's do this piece. And so I got to interview Pauline. And part of what interested me was this music and the fact that I had loved it so much when I was young and wanted to find out what was going on around the music. But the other fact was that she was still living in San Francisco, and that her story was also a deeply California tale of a kind of, let's call it new age culture at the time, but, spiritual, innovative, exploratory, and willing to use technology to play with consciousness. So we had a great talk, and I wrote up a profile that came out in the November issue of The Wire. I believe it's the November issue. And so now I invited Paula onto the show to chat with us here on Expanding Minds. So, Paula, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Well, like as we talked about before, one of the fun things to hear about in your story is really how you discovered, let's call it space music. You hadn't grown up being a super musician focused person, but you kind of found the music along the way. So tell me a little bit about your life. What was going on when you first heard this sort of what we might call ambient music now, but that a lot of people called space music at the time?
Well, I guess I was always music fades into this, but my mind and my imagination were always somewhere else. And the music sort of fit, electronics fit, playing with sound, creating sound and that kind of thing. When I got into the synthesizers, like with the Prophet 10, the DX, and all of that, it fit me. It fit everything. I felt totally at home with it, almost like I had known it before.
That's fascinating. And then and when you first heard recordings, by Brian Eno or Klaus Schulze, classic sort of 70s space music or ambient music, was there something that how did that music strike you, in contrast to all the other music you might have been listening to at that time?
It's timeless. It would have the same effect and the same power a million years from now and probably a million years in the past. It's timeless. It's universal.
Well, that's one of the things listening to Trans-Millennia music, the new collection, which draws from your early LPs and then these very, very obscure cassettes, which I didn't even know about, which are impossible to find. So there's quite a range of music from the whole period of time when you were making music in the 80s. And one thing that's interesting is that when you listen to it, you can tell from certain timbres that it's the music was made, at a certain period of time when technology had gotten to a certain level. There's certain sounds that you're like, okay, that's kind of an 80s thing. But that is swallowed up by, again, like the sense of transport, of other realms, of other dimensions and other feelings and strange memories. And it's a very evocative music. And so your own experience of the music as being evocative is very much part of the music you put out. What was that about, like when you were making tracks? Describe the kind of imaginative side of it, not just the making of not just playing instruments, but you were really exploring your own imagination and your own sense of making music that could transport.
Okay, well, I believe, now I have my own theories of a lot of philosophy and things, but I believe in reincarnation, but I believe in a different way. I believe it's the transport of knowledge that we carry in with us in our soul and our mind, lifetime after lifetime. We carry in the knowledge of experience, or we carry in, past, present, and future are all one. And whether we're pulling in that knowledge from past universes or past lifetimes or future realms and situations, we're pulling in, accessing that knowledge through whatever degree and whatever element it comes through. That's where it connects. That's where when you create, and I know you're not talking about the creation of the synthesizer sounds itself, but when you're pulling that in and you're translating it into, say, a piece of music, like some of the ones on the compilation. I don't think this piece is on, or the Water on Ancient Keys. I could visualize the harbor of Alexandria centuries ago, probably in the time of Alexander the Great, that kind of thing, the Ptolemaic dynasties, and I could picture the water. And when I played the keyboard and created the sound of water, I could feel the sound, the texture of the sound of water in my fingers. I know it sounds weird, but I can do that. So, in incorporating different sounds and different elements, you're bringing in that knowledge of the drops of water hitting the stone, hitting ships, however. Does that make sense?
Oh, very much. I mean, that's it. It sounds like an incredibly rich process. And when we talked before, you also described these sort of very strong images and visual experiences associated with things like seeing the sort of the areas, or seeing the quay, or seeing the water, seeing the tenement.
Oh yeah.
And of course, that raises this very interesting question, because you've been blind from birth.
Yes.
And part of this music and your own imagination is bound up with a very unique way of being in the world. And I would just love to hear what it is like to be working with the imagination, with getting the sense of other places, other times, other information that then informs your music. What's that like for you? What's that like? How did you learn or discover that imaginative realm, which for people with sight, we associate with images, with visual images. But for you, it has a different character.
I didn't exactly learn it or anything. It just happened. I guess it's just a natural, innate ability that some people are born with. That's the only way I can describe it. But it's like I guess the way I put it is I translate visual into audio. Translating a whole scene or a whole scenario or a whole emotional situation. There's a piece, and I know it's not on any record, I called The Blood Celebrants. And it had to do with the vampire legends and that kind of thing. And I could picture, there's another piece I did called Circus Maximus, and the gladiator scenario, and the killing, and the animals, and the people, and all of that. You could feel all of that. In some of the spiritual things I have done, best way to describe this to you, I'll take this example because it's several years back, so, but it's one of many. I did a consultation or a reading, if you call it, for someone, and I picked up in this man the centuries way back in sort of a jungle setting where he had his leg cut off. Now, I could smell and feel the blood, and I was really sick for a few hours after I did that. I didn't touch this person or anything, but the knowledge came through to me of this experience that he had, and I could experience that in my own mind and my own body. Does this make sense?
Did you always feel, growing up that you weren't living in the same kind of sense of time that other people did, that some of us are very much, we're just where we are, it's 19,
well,
I was born in
right.
1967, it's 2017 right now. Maybe I can read about history in a book, or watch a movie, but, for the most part, I'm pretty here. It sounds to me like you have always felt sort of relating to different times in a different way.
Yes, definitely. I've always not felt like I was thrown into this present time, this present civilization. Yes, I like my electricity and the water and all those kind of conveniences, but the rest of it, no thank you. I've always felt out of synchronicity with it.
And then how did that affect your life, the decisions you made?
As a little girl, I felt that way. I can remember parents and adults saying to me, "I don't know where you get that from." Yeah, so I've always I was just dropped into this environment that I don't like.
So that was part of it too, is that these other places, they offered another angle and even a little bit of an escape from present circumstances.
No, it wasn't an escape. It was like I was dropped into a situation where I just did not fit, and thrown into modernity and present time. I just did not fit into it. I still don't in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and so music for you became a way of exploring those other dimensions. What inspired you to actually start making music? From being a listener or someone who loved music, or I know you listened to a lot of early space music. There was a great radio show in the Bay Area, Hearts of Space.
Yeah.
And that you first heard that when you were living in San Francisco?
Yes.
And did that inspire, like, I want to make this stuff?
Well, before that, I had been buying a lot of records, Schultz and Tangerine Dream and Brian Eno and Vangelis and all of that. I'd been buying all of that. And then, of course, I'm a night person, so I, tuned into that program late at night. And I felt I could do the same thing. I really did. And electronics gave me the freedom to do that.
So what were there challenges being blind in terms of how did you interact with the technology, since the technology is clearly designed for people who can see where the meters are, which button is which, blah, blah, blah. You had to learn these things in a different way than they were designed. Was that easy? Was it an interesting challenge? Did you find that it led you to use the technology maybe in different ways than people expected?
In different ways, but I learned as I go. And I learn through repetition, and I try something and see what I get and play with it that way. And a lot of times I would make a sound or something, and someone could ask me, how did you do that? And I honestly couldn't tell you how I did it. I just did it. I could not, for the love of me, tell you the process or how I did it, what modulator or carrier on the DX, all of the frequencies, that kind of thing. I just my hand, it's just like I went into a different space and could just do this. I would start at 6 at night and not be tired until 6 in the morning, and then I'd crash. But time would almost seem like 5 minutes, and it was hours.
Well, and that translates to a lot of the tracks. And since we're talking about it, let's hear one of the tracks now. The one I chose from that's on the new collection is called In Flight Suspension, and it's the last track on one of those cassettes that came out, a cassette that was devoted to compositions about flight and
airport visions, yeah.
Yeah, so this one is In Flight Suspension, and we'll just hear a short excerpt from it right now. That's pretty cool. So do you remember anything that was going on when you composed this particular track or other tracks that are on that cassette, Mach 304?
Oh, I used to have a fascination with the airport. And I would take a Sony TCD5M, you remember that recorder? And this was way before 9/11 and all that. You could do these kind of things. And anyway, my husband and I went and dropped a friend off at the airport. And I like to walk around the airport and just record sounds and people and that type of thing. And that basically all went into that particular cassette.
So are there found sounds on that on some of the other tracks there too, like sounds of the airport mixed in with the music?
I don't know if you had that one, but there is the Mach 304 is the name of the cassette, and Airport Visions. There's the sound of the ticket agent and my friend getting his ticket, and some pilots walking by talking about their flight, and a place. Little area there where people had coffee and you could hear the dishes, and just different little fade-ins of things like that.
And so where did the fascination with flight come from?
I think in a lot of ways, traveling through space and time and your mind, yes, that way.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny. It reminds me when you were talking about the airports. I just had a wonderful experience. There's a current exhibit at San Francisco Museum of Modern Art called Soundtracks, which is a lot of sound art. There's a Brian Eno piece, and there's a number of pretty cool pieces in the show itself. But one of the artists whose name's going to slip my mind at the moment, maybe I can dig it up. Offered, kind of created this wonderful way of interacting with the city, which I don't understand why people don't do all the time, which is basically they give you these headphones which pick up, electromagnetic frequencies, induction fields. And so you put them on and they have a little map of around the museum. So you leave the museum and you go walk around in a few blocks and go through a mall, and there's all these little prompts like, oh, make sure to listen to the ATM or listen to the neon sign. And you put these headphones on and you realize, I mean, I knew this conceptually, that when we walk around the city, we're walking around electromagnetic fields all the time, but we don't hear them and they're invisible, so we just don't think about them. And you put these headphones on and that's what you're listening to. You're listening to all of these waveforms and all of these, induction fields and buzzings and hummings and beats and security systems and lights and all the current running through the architecture. And it was just extraordinary experience, like just walking around. And it was like visible and invisible at the same time. It's like you could hear what was invisible, and you felt like you were actually seeing something that all these people didn't tune into at all. They didn't know what they were walking through. And suddenly I could hear that that the neon sign was incredibly, it sounded like a sort of slow doom metal chorus, and then there would be these strange high frequency beeps, and it was very beautiful. And I don't understand why people don't do this all the time.
I've got to get some of those headphones.
I know they're just super, but it made me think about the whole situation of walking around the city. And again, when I imagine you walking around the airport with your tape recorder, like your ability to tune into something different about the airport because you're only relating to sound.
Right.
You're moving through space, you're listening, you're recording, but you're not caught up in all the visual information. In a way, it's an almost more intimate experience. That's sort of how I felt with these headphones. I was like, God, in a way, I'm actually in the city more intimately than I am just walking around looking at everything and hearing the normal sounds. So I mean, again, I really appreciate, one of the things I like talking to you about is that the way you don't lean on being a blind person. You don't make it like a core aspect of your identity. But at the same time, I'm fascinated with how you feel it has let you understand the world differently and perhaps more intimately than those of us who've been sighted since birth.
Well, okay, I think I know where you're going here. In day-to-day life, even just walking around or going downstairs in my apartment building or to a taxi or whatever, interacting with my animal, different things, you are more aware of the living, breathing element of everything around us, whether it's things that people are doing or it's even objects, because even at a low energetic or frequency level, everything has a depth of energy to it, a depth of vibrational frequencies to it, whether it's a rock, a river rock, or the concrete of the building. Everything picks up a certain energy. Houses, dwellings, buildings pick up the energy and or the emotion or the personalities of people who are in them. And people don't really think about that or realize that. Am I making sense?
Yes, very much.
And when I think because of not being able to see all of these things, I'm not distracted by the visual things going on around me.
Yeah,
I listen and sense through a sensory level what's going on in subtle different ways. When I'm around people and they're talking, it's not the words that people say when you bypass people or say like, I'm someplace and I listen to, waiting for a taxi and I'm hearing other conversations. It's not necessarily the words, they do matter, yes, but it's how a person says something. It's the tone, the inflection of the voice, the cadence, all of that you pick up everything. It's even the breathing. There is someone that works in an area where I bypass, and I can be feet away, and I can hear this man's breathing, which he doesn't even realize. And I just said to him, you better start watching what you do as far as your smoking and all that. And he says, how do you know? And I said, you can pick it up 10 feet away, 20 feet away. It's the way you talk, the way you breathe, the way everything. You follow me?
Oh yeah, I mean you clearly are gifted with that kind of intuitive. We talk about intuition and it's sort of a funny word because it's on the one hand it implies that people are actually able to understand true things about the world better, but it's also something that people think is kind of fuzzy, like it doesn't, who knows what it is, and maybe it's just like people are good at guessing. But intuition is it's like almost like another sense.
Yes, the sixth sense, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. And so I use that and depend on that in making decisions and doing everything that I do.
Yeah. And then one of the things that interests me is that your music came out, in the 80s in the Bay Area. You were listening to Hearts of Space. And also these records, but that was a very much of a Bay Area, starts in the Bay Area. We've had Stephen Hill on the show, and so there's this whole kind of local culture of, let's say, new age music. Back in the golden days, so people have bad associations with that term, but there's some wonderful music that was and occasionally is still made under the sort of umbrella of the new age, which some people put your music into. Which is fair enough, but not quite accurate. And so I wanted to ask you about how you felt you related to or were different from a lot of the things that were going on in the area at the same time, because you were dealing with people who were running new age labels and recording labs. And so you were, a little bit a part of that world. And so I just love to hear you, because you were also, always been very spiritually sensitive as well, how you sort of felt about that world at the time and how you related to it.
Okay. I sort of danced around things, never really became an in-depth participant in things, but sort of just kept my aloofness and just danced around things and kept my own. Yeah, I'm very opinionated in a lot of ways, but just sort of kept everything at arm's length. I mean, yes, I did the music, and yes, I was sort of danced around part of these things like you're describing, but at the same time, I'm a woman that would, I had loved to cook at the time. I made bread. I did a lot of Julia Child recipes, all kind of things that a normal housewife would do. I was into all of that type of thing. So there was a part of me, I never really bought into one specific thing. And I think I mentioned this to you before. Whether it's healing or counseling or any of the things that I do, I sort of take from everything I experience and every bit of knowledge I pull in and create my own system in everything in my own way. And so I'm basically probably a heretic to all of it. But
Which I can tell you enjoy.
yes, I do. When you get to a point in life where you don't worry about what people think, there's a friend of mine that's a security person. He says, "That's what I like about you. You don't give a damn. You say what you think."
No, it's very true. And were you always like that, or did you go through like, was there some, come to Jesus moment when you were young where you realized, hey, if I don't give a shit, everything's freer? Or were you always like that?
I was always like that. That's what I feel when we talked earlier about, like, Phil, I'm out of synchronicity. I was dropped into this present civilization or time frame or planet or whatever you want, and be out of balance with it. I've always been that way. And I got that over and over from my very first memories of, I don't know where you get this from. None of us are like you. I mean, I've always been, I think I was born like that.
Yeah.
Well, I was a premature baby and spent a few months in the incubator. God knows what that did. So
I'm curious, when you were younger, did you did you have self-pity because you were blind, or did you always go, this is just the way I am. I'm living my life anyway. I don't care.
No self-pity. More or less, it was a fucking nuisance.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it. And
Well,
this thing about blind people, the independence in a lot of the community is being able to take public transportation and go where you got to do this and that and use an ATM. That's not independence to me. Independence to me is handling my own personal life, my money, everything else. As far as the transportation, all that, hell, I'd be driving a car. You don't catch me walking. And aside from that, I allow security people and drivers and people I come in contact with, graciously help me in a lot of ways, and I become their friend. This is something that I think is breaking down in our world. Americans, we don't actually help each other. There is a whole industry that has evolved. You look at people from other countries, they have this tight-knit, interconnected, whether it's familial and friends, they all help each other. We go to the system. We go to the government, to providers, to all that. Oh, not me. You won't catch me doing that. I make friends with everybody that crosses my path, and I tend to help them. And in turn, they help me in some ways. It's not I need you to do this. No, it's not that. It's just like, forget the blind part. It's just becoming friends with somebody, oh, you're going to Costco? I'll give you, you can, if you want to go to Costco, you can go on my card, whatever, I do things to blend and to make friends with people so that they don't feel that they are doing something for me because I'm blind, and I don't feel, do you see where I'm going?
Totally. No, it's, I mean, one of the wonderful things about talking to you and probably why I wanted to bring you on the show is just, you've really made me rethink my own, I don't call them prejudices, but my own sort of generic ways of thinking about how people move through the world, and that your quality of independence, it's not just about, oh, isn't that great? You're listen to how independent you are as a blind person, but it's more that, like, you remind me of different ways of being with people, like that there's different ways of, like you're saying, like you form a relationship, you form a friendship, and that part of the way it is for you to be friends is that, yeah, they might drive you somewhere, or you might lend them something or tell them something they didn't know or whatever. And it just kind of opened my eyes in a lot of ways,
but
so to speak.
It makes it hard. The hard part about it is the stereotype of people out there, of disabled people. You're either these fantastic superheroes or you're these people that need, assistance and all that. There's the two extremes, and to me, not to fit either one of them, it makes it difficult for people like me, because you don't know how many times, if I'm somewhere like down at 450 Sutter or something like that, in an elevator, and someone will ask me, "Honey, are you on SSI?" I felt like honey, take it and shove it. I mean, they automatically assume that this poor you attitude.
Yeah. No, I mean, one thing that really struck me in your is the way that you were never interested in Braille.
No.
You were like, who needs it?
Yeah. And they push that still. And you don't need it in this day and age anyway. But when granted, yes, I had husbands that could see and drive cars. So, I've always gone out of my way to handle things the way I see fit that they should be handled. But then I always have that battle of being accepted. And it's like you walk down the street and you're going to think everybody out there in the Tenderloin is a dealer just because of the way they dress or where they are in location. No, you can't do that. It's the same thing with disabilities. Does that make sense?
It's amazing to me. I think about that all the time, both watching my own mind, because for better and for worse, I'm very self-aware. So I'm very aware of all the things that I'm doing all the time, which sometimes makes me kind of neurotic, but also makes me sensitive to a lot of things. Is just how easy it is to put people into categories. And it's always interesting. I wonder if you feel this too, as someone who's very intuitive, is I often feel a kind of, there's not a struggle, but there's a tension between my intuition, which is maybe a very strong message about this particular person, but at the same time I'm like, oh wait, am I just running a stereotype here? And there's this kind of tension because I don't want to just put people in boxes, but at the same time, sometimes I go, oh, that person's crazy, or that person's not very nice, or whatever it is. And so there's always this kind of this kind of tension.
The powers that be have created this too. If you look at it in the broader picture, the government, organizations, it's all an industry, and it's fostered this kind of thing. Why? And it's like I had this lizard. I think you know about Little Solstice. She's a cyclura, and I know not many people would have something like that. Even people that could see probably wouldn't have her. But it's anything that's different, anything it doesn't fit what people expect. It doesn't. Our society isn't geared to individualism, and I believe in people being an individual, not a conformist or part of a group.
Yeah, I think you're right about. I mean, it's like what you said before about that. There's all these industries, and whether some of them are from the government, and some of them are private. But we've outsourced all these ways of being with people to quote unquote professionals. But it just makes it all more alienating and easy to just not even try and just live in your little bubble.
Yeah, it's easier to control people that way.
But I wanted to ask you, since you were talking about not using Braille, you've been a fan of audiobooks, we call them now, but you've been listening to audio books forever. And you have this device that's really interesting, the Victor Reader. I'd just love to hear you talk about how you access information.
Yeah, well, I use the Victor. I've got Wi-Fi, and the only reason I have that is so I can use the Victor. And sometime I'll have to maybe get together with you and show you. But anyway, I can I can access an outfit called Bookshare on Palo Alto and download into that all sorts of books, and it's Audible, really. and also on NLS, National Library Congress. And I can access the news line and get every news feed possible. I can access radio stations all over the world and podcast. In fact, before I talked to you, I put in Expanded Mind, and I got 3 feeds. I don't know which one is yours. I'll find out. But that were Expanded Mind. So I can access all of these kind of things and keep every program or every book on SD cards. God, I'm in that whirlwind right now of downloading things and saving them because I've always wanted the Alexandrian Library. Well, I'm going to get it.
Yeah, I maybe yours is going to be less of a surveillance library like the rest of us because it'll be on SD cards. Most people they access their Alexandrian library through, through their smartphone, which means that it's, watching every move you make.
That's why I won't have a phone like that. The technology has that downside to it. Privacy. Was it Eric Schmidt or the guy from Google or whatever? That privacy is it's not a normal thing anymore. That's bullshit. Privacy is a sacred thing. And when you begin to give in to that and say it's not, the government can control your mind, everything. What do you think they're doing with engineering all this stuff? This technology, these phones and all of this and everything. People are addicted to it.
It's pretty strange out there. I'm not going to argue. Actually, I wanted to. This reminds me of one thing. We've drifted away from talking about your music, but there was one question I wanted to ask that also really interests me. Is that if I go back and I listen to your recordings that you made in the '80s, and as I mentioned, especially the first record, it shares in the ambiance of a lot of other music people were making at that time, influenced by space music, by Brian Eno and ambient music, by new age music. There's a lot of sense of space, of interiority, of enchantment, of transformation. It has a fairly light feeling. I mean, not substantive, but light as in airy and full of light. And so, and then it's kind of like other, it's in a sort of larger category of a lot of music people were making at that time. But later records, you go into some really interesting directions, like on the album Spectre, which has a couple of tracks that are on the new compilation.
Yeah. There's
some quite dark currents there. And then if you go online and you search for Spectre on YouTube, you'll find that the records that it gets associated with it are all sort of like, they're not new age music. It's like dark side, like goth music and a dark ambient and things. And so you seem to be interested both aesthetically and spiritually with both the light and the dark.
Yes, I am.
I'd love to hear about that.
Well, I am definitely connected with both in a lot of different ways. Let's see, how can I put this? Okay. I am definitely drawn to the Middle Ages and definitely drawn through a period of history when there was a lot of cruelty and a lot of sadism and all that. And I'm drawn into a lot of the, you'd say occult, but I'm not part of anything. I'm just drawn to it, and I feel I've experienced things relevant to this. And as far as how it connects with the music, it's expressing all of these different experiences through the music. I would be, and in a practical way, I would be bored to tears if I had to be predictable from one project to another. I have ideas in my mind that have been building for a long time of projects that I want to do when I get equipment. And I guarantee you they're going to be different from project to project, just like the ones you've heard are. But I have no problem with the light and the dark. There's only two forces, really, in my book, love and fear. And everything generates from those. And fear can be a powerfully negative, controlling factor if you let it. And as long as you don't let that overcome you, you're fine.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I've been thinking a lot lately about working with fear because our world is very frightening now. Maybe it's always been frightening, but it's frightening in very particular ways, and it's very easy. If you're like reading the news or going down various rabbit holes online or talking to people about what's going on in their lives, there's a lot of fear out there. And of course, some people are using it. So on the one hand, fear is being used as a control method.
Oh, definitely.
Fear is, but at the same time, there's scary things. So how do you know, how do you work with fear so that you're not just pretending everything is all love and light, which it's not, but not getting caught up in the traps associated with becoming a fearful person and being controlled by other people's fear propaganda?
Okay, can I kind of illustrate an example of something here? That's the way I tend to talk and work. Is that
I'd
okay?
love it.
Okay. All right. Now, hypothetically, you have this thing about, there would never be any war. Oh, come on. Okay, so somebody's sitting here and they're saying, well, I said, what would you do? And they would say, well, I'd try to talk to them or whatever. No. You're going to pick up the next weapon you can get your hands on and blow them away before they do you. Come on. It's fantasy to think that, and you can talk people out of something, or you can, no, it's self-preservation and survival. And you can't, if you get rid of armies and you get rid of all of that, and another force, or a darker force, or whatever you want to call it, decides to come in and take over your situation or your country or your element, what are you going to do? Sit there and talk to them and plead with them? No. That you're going to want those soldiers back to protect you. That's what you're going to want. Let's get real. It's not a question of fear in the sense of, you're afraid of something. Like if this animal of mine were to bite me, and I've had my share of bad bites. I've had different reptiles over the years. They can't talk. They can't, but I've had a bite. I can take care of it. The first thing I do whenever I've been bit in years gone by is to pick up the animal and hold it. Why? Because I won't let that fear master me. Does this make sense? Am I making sense? Or is there a question you have about this?
No, this is very interesting. I mean, as I said, I've been kind of wrestling with that a lot. For me, fear is a very primary emotion, and that a lot of the growth that I've done, both intellectual and political, but also spiritual, has been through fear. Like it's not like trying to bypass it.
That's why, and I think it's important for people to, and I wish I could teach this, to learn. You know how we talked earlier about how I walk around and I pick up sensations and I'm more empathic? Remember how we talked about that a little while back?
Absolutely.
If people could do that, could develop that internal ability, it could save your life.
Yeah, I think you're right. One of the things I like to do is when, if there's people who are, let's just say, mentally different, on the street or on a streetcar, is I notice that they often are attracted to me because I notice them and I pay attention to them and I'm not judging them.
Right.
And then they come up, and sometimes I've had these interactions where I have to really trust my intuition to know, is this person dangerous? Or can I continue to have a conversation with them? And sometimes they seem a little dangerous, the way that street people can be like real on edge. And, I don't know if I'm right, but it's forced me to like develop a kind of confidence in being in difficult situations with people and really trying to tune into like, wait, is this actually a threat, or is there some human connection here that I can trust at least for the next 5 minutes? So I
Yeah, but
think
you
I know
don't
what
have
you're
time
talking
to
about.
analyze it. You have to just feel it.
Yeah, and that's what you've been doing a lot since you stopped making music in the 80s. I mean, you had to get rid of your gear, and so
Yeah.
it's been so long since you've made music. You've been doing I know you do spiritual work and counseling with folks. Are you itchy to get back to music?
Oh, yes. If I had the money, I'd go to Guitar Center right now.
Well, we're trying to work something out over here. We're trying to get a benefit together, get you some cash so you can make some more music, because that's I think we would all appreciate that.
And
So,
I tend to work alone. I've never really worked with anybody. Um, I like working alone. You know, all of those cassettes and everything else. I created all that in the 3D effect, like I told you. You know, the composition as I create it as I go. I make the whole system work for me. At that time, I made the synthesizers, the 24-track board, the QX1s, and I have a rack of effects that had a super prime time and all sorts of units. And I made all of that work for me as one instrument. Every piece of equipment made the one instrument. And a friend of mine told me, he says, Paula, you can go now and you can buy one workstation, not a computer, a workstation, Yamaha or Korg, and everything that you had is in that little box, and it'll do all of that stuff. Because
very exciting.
I make the effects and everything. I don't look at it as a polish. I look at it as part of the composition.
Hey, that's very interesting. Can you say more? How effects are not just polish, but actually part of the composition?
You can create a space for the sound. I love to make different sounds like come when you and I work with headphones all the time. So like the sound would be coming up from the floor instead of directly at you, or having a glass of water pour from one side of the room to the other, or giving everything a depth, like you were in a not just a reverb or anything, but deeper than that, in a canyon, or having things a lot of movement, a lot of sculpture to the sound, time intervals, all that kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
sounds like you're still thinking like like you're making music. It's kind of amazing that it's
and
it's
that's where I want the piece of equipment I get. I'm going to have to talk. I need a good technician that I can talk to
yeah.
and understand what I want, because I don't want to be sold something that I would be, dissatisfied with later. I'm not really a performer. I'm a composer, and that's and a sound. I guess a sound effects and a sound engineer in a lot of ways. But I'm self-taught, and I want to be able to do all these things. I don't want just something where you play the keyboard. That's not enough. What I want is the piece of equipment to do all of these things that I'm describing to you, and to manipulate all of that. Oh, yeah. I have something called the TX-816, which Yamaha only made a few of them. I have it sitting here. It was connection with the DX7. They only made a limited amount of them, and it's like 8 little DX7s in a box. And I created a lot of sounds in there. It's amazing. That kind of stuff, I can't tell you how fascinated I have always been with it. It's like coming home. It's why I kind of believe that I had to have had some connection or some ability with this in a previous lifetime or something. I had to have something to do with, because this kind of stuff has always drawn me.
I'm curious, we got time for one more question. When you think about making music in the future, do you already have a sense of what you want to make, or is it more like you want to have the tools show you the new music?
Sense. And I'll be mistress of them, and I'll make them do what I want. But I already have a sense of a lot of things I want to create.
Wonderful. Well, we're going to have to end it there. Paula, thanks so much for joining us on Expanding Mind.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and I'll talk to you soon. Great.
So this is Pauline Anna Strom, and please check out her new compilation, Trans-Millennia Music. It's a wonderful multi-headed journey. So check it out. And until next week, keep your minds open.